Good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to Encompass. We'll be starting the webinar in just a few seconds. We just give some time to the participants to join the streaming, and we'll be starting indeed in a minute or so. Thank you so much for participating. Good, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the first event of the Encompass series. Thank you so much for taking part, to those of you on Zoom or on YouTube. And welcome indeed to the inaugural event of Encompass. My name is Andrea Bandelli. I'm the Director of Science Gallery International, a network of universities, which you can see now on the screen. The objective of today is to bring together a remarkable group of thought leaders and creatives with radical new approaches, and to show different points of views on the value and the power of art and science to create new knowledge and new meanings, and to give really relevance to the scientific and artistic research. Today we'll also use this moment as a compass, as a guide, to shape and to guide our thinking about the wonderful field of citizen science. April is Citizen Science Month, and citizen science is often described as the participation of ordinary citizens in scientific research. But I think it's actually about extraordinary citizens, because when you contribute to the shared common good that is indeed creating new knowledge and advancing what we know, that's really a beautiful, wonderful thing to do. And we'll hear today of many different ways of shaping and contributing to this knowledge through indeed the artistic cultural practice. We have 3 participants from worldwide practice with a very dynamic activity, people who connect other people and institutions, and who really give value to this global collaboration. To introduce and to lead us into these conversations and to shape the conversation is Aisling Murray, who's head of programming at Science Gallery Dublin. And therefore, Aisling, please take the lead, introduce the participants, and take us on these wonderful conversations of the Encompass series. Thank you very much.
Super, and thank you so much, Andrea. I'm excited to be participating in this conversation today. As Andrea said, I'm the head of programming in Science Gallery in Dublin, where we bring together art and science through broad, socially engaged themes. So through a program of exhibitions, education, and events. And we do this through informal learning, so learning through hobbies and interests rather than formal education, and really using our core values of connect, participate, and surprise. So connect, how we can best kind of connect and resonate with people, participation in activities where people can learn something more about themselves or teach us something, and surprise, how we can kind of challenge people's preconceived notions around certain ideas. As Andrea mentioned, in honor of Citizen Science Month, this first session will explore the unique contributions that artists and designers have to make to scientific knowledge. Citizen science is research carried out by members of the public and involving citizens in research across the different STEM disciplines. And science activism, which is something that has come up a lot in Science Gallery Dublin and even across the network, is indeed a type of citizen science, or you could certainly classify it in that way, as are many art science projects. For me, one of the most exciting and unique opportunities in working in a science gallery is the opportunity to connect and really reach the research community in the university in finding ways to engage and connect with the public, and with research and the knowledge exchange that can happen there. Art science projects are definitely a creative and provocative way to do this. Our panelists today have a wealth of experience amongst them across art, design, activism, and academia. And I'm delighted to be joined by Sasha Engelmann, geographer, writer, and artist, Cathrine Cramer, artist and curator, and Ernesto Walker, artist and academic. We're going to hear a short presentation from each of the panelists, showcasing some of their work, and then we'll have a discussion followed by Q&As from the audience. So first up, we have Sasha Engelmann, who's a London-based geographer, writer, and artist. Her practice-based research investigates interdisciplinary, feminist, and creative approaches to environmental knowledge making. She is a member of the Aeroscene community, a network of practitioners who make, launch, and fly solar-powered balloon-like sculptures to query the intersections of global air mobility, advanced capitalism, and fossil fuel extraction. Together with researcher activist Sophie Dyer, she leads the feminist amateur radio project Open Weather. She is a lecturer in geohumanities at Royal Holloway University in London. Sasha, take it away. I think you're just muted there. Now, if you just want to unmute Sasha. It should be on the bottom left.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. Of course, that would happen in a Zoom webinar. So hi, everybody. My name is Sasha Engelmann, and I'm super happy to be here today. Thanks so much, Aisling, for that kind introduction. Also, thanks to the Science Gallery for organizing this event. And lovely to be here with Ernesto and Cathrine. So nice to be here with both of you. So in this short talk, I'm going to say a few more words about the Aeroscene community before delving a little bit more deeply into how Aeroscene as an artistic project has been involved in citizen science on air quality in Argentina in the last couple years. So in practice, Aeroscene involves designing, testing, and moving with solar, lighter than air sculptures that look very much like hot air balloons, but are instead powered entirely by solar energy. Aeroscene sculptures are usually made from very thin, dark fabric, so that when the sun warms their surfaces, the air warms up inside the membrane and becomes less dense than the air outside, generating lift. And so the proposition of Aeroscene is that we can challenge regimes of fossil fuel extraction, not by multiplying batteries and circuits, but by harnessing the energy already circulating in the air. Now, Aeroscene was initiated by my colleague and dear friend Tomas Saracino in 2015 during a now legendary Aeroscene sculpture launch at the White Sands National Monument in New Mexico. But the project has very much since expanded into many other sites from Berlin to Buenos Aires. In the past few years, for instance, Aeroscene sculptures have featured in excursions over the Italian Alps, in stratospheric aerial journeys over continental Europe, at Fridays for Future protests in many parts of the world, and in many pedagogical spaces. Each Aeroscene performance is very much first an exercise in attuned sensitivity to Earth's elemental atmosphere, and secondly, a political gesture in decarbonizing and decolonizing the air. So to build on this point on decarbonizing and decolonizing the air, in recent years, Aeroscene has worked with NOAA wind datasets and scientists at MIT to produce what's called the Aeroscene Float Predictor, or an app and a web platform that enables you to put in your location and your desired destination somewhere else on the planet, choose your altitude, and then navigate there using only solar energy and wind power. So informed by the earth sciences, this is very much a speculative tool to imagine what movement would look like if it was not tied to heavier than air fuel burning passenger planes. And more recently, Fly with Aeroscene Pacha was an action led by Tomas Saracino in January 2020 as part of the global art initiative Connect BTS, supported by the famous Korean pop band BTS, or the Bangtan Boys, that maybe people in the audience will have heard of. The Aeroscene Pacha team achieved the first ever fully autonomous air travel with the DOAC Aeroscene sculpture, piloted by Leticia Marquez. And when I say fully autonomous, I mean that Leticia left the surface of the Earth without any tethers to hold her down to the planet. So it was very much a free solar-powered flight. And in solidarity with Indigenous communities from Tres Pozos, Pozo Colorado, and Tequila, the sculpture carried a collectively written message that read, "El agua y la vida valen más que el litio," or water and life are worth more than lithium. Again, echoing this idea that we need to rethink our default reliance on batteries, circuits, and solar panels to invent climate-sensitive societies. Now, in the past 2 years, Aerocene has become engaged in citizen science on air quality in Argentina. More specifically, we're working on producing reliable air pollution data sets using lightweight air monitoring devices that can be fixed to buildings or lifted into the air with Aerocene sculptures. And we are doing this not only to create scientific data sets on air quality, but also to understand how artistic and justice-centered methods can contribute to environmental co-management with communities in the Global South. And to this end, this project is very much driven by an interdisciplinary coalition, including first and foremost, the residents of Villa Inflamable, or the Flammable Town, an underserved community sited next to the largest petrochemical facility in Argentina, a community that has withstood decades of environmental harm through air, water, and soil. Second, the government environmental agency Acumar. And third, a group of local engineers and hackers known as the Lupea School. And this air sensing project is co-led by Dr. Deborah Swistoon, an anthropologist at the University of Avellaneda and a former resident of Villa Inflamable, Joaquin Escura, a cartographer and Aerocene community coordinator in Buenos Aires, and myself as a geographer of air and atmosphere who has helped to develop Aerocene's relationship to environmental science over the last 5 years. Now, the making of this coalition is driven by a hope that there are other ways of engaging air quality and public health beyond the simple application of science to local air quality concerns. Rather, we are aspiring to create data sets that are serving, managed, and vetted by those most affected by these atmospheric issues, namely the residents of Villa Inflamable. And to do this, we very much require expertise from sociology, from anthropology, from geography, as well as the arts and humanities. And I want to make a couple very quick points in closing. First, the mixture of expertise I've outlined does not on its own ensure the project will achieve its key aims. To ensure they are met, we are turning to design justice, a movement that investigates how design can mitigate rather than exacerbate structural inequalities. And we have been inspired by design justice, for example, to move toward protocols that establish who will own the environmental data sets, how will they be stored, and how or when can they be shared or published. And second, it's important to us that the role of art is not confined to public engagement or media campaigns. Rather, art interventions interventions directly into the data collection process. For example, asking us to consider which forms of sensual, historical, and experiential knowledges are crucially important to understanding how air is sensed. Art also foregrounds the imaginaries, narratives, and stories that can and should be part of any investigation of the environment. That brings me to the end of my introduction. Thank you.
Sasha, that was super. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely have plenty of questions on that. I'd encourage people, even as we go to, if you have questions specific to individual projects, do shoot those in and we'll get to the questions at the end. So next up, we have Cathrine Cramer, who's a Norwegian artist and curator working internationally. She's the co-founder of the Center for Genomic Astronomy, an artist-led think tank that maps food controversies, prototypes, alternative culinary futures, and imagines more just, biodiverse, and beautiful food systems. Cathrine has curated exhibitions about food, strange weather, and the future of the human species for Science Gallery Dublin and the Centre of Contemporary Culture Barcelona. She's lectured at numerous academic institutions around the world and holds degrees from the Royal College of London and the University of Technology, Sydney. Cathrine works at the intersection of art and science with a focus on the ecological, cultural, and ethical dimensions of life on spaceship Earth. Cathrine, over to you.
Hello, thanks very much for the intro. Yeah, I'm going to just keep track of the time as well. So so I'll just quickly go through a sort of extremely brief overview of what I've been into in the last few years. And I start with this slide and the poster, "We've always been biohackers," which is something I created back in 2011 and sort of put it out there as an open source image, and it was taken up by Hacketeria and Art Science Bangalore and various other groups, and is spread around as a message. And it's sort of very interesting to see where that notion has been taken up by others. And essentially the reasoning behind it was to say that, you know, science shouldn't be left to scientists only to develop, but instead all citizens should participate, and have for thousands of years, in understanding and manipulating our environments to improve it for ourselves, but also then being sensitive to those environments and respecting them as things for themselves. So the first thing, here we go. The first thing, I've lost there we go, to talk about, is Open Labs, which was an exhibition that I co-curated for Science Gallery back in 2009 now, I believe. And in it we featured 4 art focused, I suppose, or not always art focused, but citizen science groups or art and science groups. So there was Hackers and Designers from the Netherlands, Public Lab from the USA, Art Science Bangalore from India, and BioArt Society from Finland. And in the exhibition, we showcased a lot of these groups are very process oriented and not so interested in a final artistic product, you could say. But so we featured a lot of the processes in the gallery, as well as held lots of workshops around those. And it also showed works by artists who had interfaced with these different groups to sort of show what types of ideas and things came out of it. And as part of that, we used Public Lab's open source mapping tools to map the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland just before Brexit was finalized, to sort of just see what this border looks like from the air as one of the gestures for the exhibition. And then let's go to the next slide. There. Sorry. So We've Always Been Biohackers. I've actually just started an investigation into this poster. It was first printed as a lithography print in Bangalore when I was visiting Art Science Bangalore back in 2011. And I've just started interviewing different people who've used it in their work, or to sort of trace how this idea has disseminated over time and in different geographies. So that's very early days now, but that's been an interesting thing to start looking into. And then I thought I might just give an example of one of the projects we have created as the Center for Genomic Gastronomy, which is my artist collaborative group. And this also actually started at that same time in Bangalore, when we were working with a group of students at the Shushti School of Art and Design and thinking about air quality. And at the time, it was there was a lot of citizen science air quality monitoring projects, and we were asking questions around how that data was being collected, who would have access to it, how would people even know how to interpret it. And in Bangalore, it was pretty obvious sometimes in certain areas that the air quality wasn't good, and you didn't actually need any data to tell you that. You could just breathe. And so we ended up deciding to whip eggs. We read a text which said when you whip eggs, it's like harvesting the air, and 90% of a meringue is air. And so we thought that this was perhaps a poetic way of capturing air quality in different places around the city. And you can then serve these meringues to local politicians or local business owners, or it can be used as a tool for activism and protest. And since then, it's happened in many places across the world. We have a sort of open source kit that people can use. Most recently, it was done as a workshop in Hungary, where we called in remotely to have a chat with people, but they sort of were responsible for pulling it off and doing all the work. And up in the top right-hand corner, you see there's a journalist in Bogota who did it and wrote an article about it. In the top left, that was it happened in Hong Kong, and it was just as the protests were kicking off, and there was a lot of tear gas. So we were thinking about how that really affected air quality and smell. And then the packages, we did one version where and that's what the video is from as well, where we asked people from all over the world to make it in their place and send it to one location. It was in Washington, DC. I believe it was for WWF, an event. And then you could taste test the different qualities from across the globe, which was also an interesting experiment. So anyway, I'll move on because of time, but that's something to ask about. Oh, and I'll just finish on this. So this is something as well my group have been sort of thinking about. It's not a finished idea by any means, but I thought I would throw it out there since this is a conversation that we're having. And STEM, and that sort of did mutate into STEAM, so they added art in there at some point. But we sort of propose perhaps rather than STEM, we should think about FEAST, food, ecology, art, science, and technology, perhaps in that order as well, by order of hierarchy. Food first, ecology, art, and that the science and technology should serve those ends, and that the techno-utopias of Silicon Valley are kind of starting to lose their shine. I'll read this text and then I'll finish. The techno-utopias dreamed by Silicon Valley are starting to lose their shine, and reactionary populist uprisings are raging across the globe. Now's the time to explore a plurality of future visions which put life and art front and center. We propose replacing STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, with a different acronym to guide us, one that prioritizes the topics and order in which artists, scientists, citizens may want to investigate the world in the 21st century. Feast for the pluriverse, ? And that's it. Thanks.
It was great. Thank you so much, Kat. And definitely that's a great provocation, that FEAST acronym. So we'll definitely be coming back to that. Next up, we have Ernesto Walker, based in the industrial city of Monterey. His artwork explores art and science as a way for finding links between what is accidental and what becomes meaningful. His background is in social sciences with a bachelor's degree in international relations. His work has been exhibited individually and collectively in 13 countries. Among other distinctions, he is first place winner of the Statue Drawing Showdown and obtained the Triennial National Arts Creators Systems Fellowship from the National Arts Fund. That's not a catchy title. It's very wordy, but well done. It's brilliant. And since January 2011, he has been a professor of the School of Art, Architecture and Design of the Tec de Monterey College. Since 2019, he's director of the Art, Science and Technology Lab of Tec de Monterey College and Aeroscene Institute. Thanks, Ernesto.
Thank you, Aisling. And I'm very happy to be here and to share with Kat and Sasha. I'm very impressed. And so I would like to tell you a little bit about, I mean, of course, a little bit about me as an artist, but about a project I've been working on since 2019. So basically, as Aisling said, I am a multidisciplinary artist. I work a lot with machines and sculpture and drawing, and I have a background in social sciences, which I think has drawn a lot of what's the way I try to address the topics I work with in my work. Also, I work a lot with in collaboration with engineers, and I try to connect the projects with what happens in the city, which is, as also Aisling said, a very industrial city with a lot of history in technology and manufacturing, and lately in business. So I'm always trying to put the roots of the project in conceptual and also in technical ways connected with the city and with what's happening in the city. But moving forward, I don't know if, okay, I have control now. So I've been working since 2019 in a new art laboratory in my city. And this is very, very meaningful for the city and for the university. This laboratory is part of Tec de Monterrey Institute, which is a leading university in Mexico and in Latin America. And it is also an evolution of Arte AC, which happened to be the first art center in Monterrey, which, as I told you, has been more about industrial and business. It's more oriented about industry and business. So this type of efforts, like art centers and museums, and there are like a lot of very, very good examples. Actually, we have a museum which had an exhibition of Tomas Saracino 3 or 4 years ago. It was awesome. And but it's not like the main profile of the city. So having this type of efforts and these institutions getting together, it is pretty meaningful for the city. And I'm going to show you how this connects with other things that are happening. And so, well, the university also, it is a very, very important university for the city. I mean, of course, in the country and the region, but it is important because it was founded by some of the industrial, the people who build the industrial profile of the city. And the institution has been very famous, especially for that, for engineering and for business. So it is also very meaningful that this, the school, it's also my alma mater, the school is opening and making these projects, putting these projects in front line, because basically they launched the new strategic plan for 2020-2030, and the laboratory and many other agents nationwide. The school has 28 campuses around Mexico. So this network of agents promoting this dialogue between art and science within the institution are part of a strategic project that's in this front line during this decade. So this is also something very, very important. And I think a lot of very good things are happening within the institution. As a student and then a professor for 9 years and now in charge of the laboratory, I have seen how this evolution has happened. When I was a student, I already started working with sculpture and you know, baby steps as an artist, and I have seen how this has been changing, and this is pretty important because also this connect with a lot of things in the city, which is also like a business pole for the country, and like there are a lot of things that connect with the different systems from the institution. And so the laboratory, it started in 2019. We've been launching some programs, especially there are 4 things that are happening. The first one is an artist residency program. We had 5 residents last year. It was awesome because they were also great artists that I am very happy they accepted the invitation to be part of the first generation, and they also became like a milestone, you know, like a statement because of their profile and their work. And so this is something that happened last year, and we are continuing with that. We also launched a production grant, which is for the community, the students. It was for the community of the school, which involves students, professors, collaborators, and former students. So basically, they could assemble work teams and propose projects that, of course, in some way nurture the dialogue between art and science, and so they could obtain some money to make the project and also be promoted in some spaces, like important spaces within the institution. And we also have a physical space which can happen being open yet because of the situation, but it's getting pretty cool, and it's gonna be a good place to be when things get back to normal. And of course, we've been working with professors and trying to connect what we are doing, which of course is like the main objective, but to connect what we are doing with the classroom and with what's happening with other disciplines and other schools, and trying to embroider both things like finely. And the other thing is that, of course, we're trying to widen the conversations with other institutions or other agents, sometimes with one foot in the school and another foot like in the street. So I put four pictures here. The third one is a piece from Tomas Saracino, but it's not Tomas Saracino. It is about the FEMSA cultural program, which happened to have one piece of Tomas. So we're working with the cultural program of FEMSA, which is one of the biggest, most important collections in Latin America. The UNAM, of course, one of the most important universities, the most important in Mexico, but also with a very, it does very good work. And so they have these efforts for actually art, science, and technology. So we're working with them in that. Also, there's a very ambitious and very interesting project for making for working with the district around the campuses of the institution, which involves a lot of other agents. We are in the tables too, and that's been pretty cool because we're trying to connect this critical way of thinking and addressing problems that have been addressed in different ways because of the history of the university, because of the history of the city, and of course the civilization, you know. But and also another very interesting thing is in the city, the Arts Council just launched this very big project of a citizen lab. So naturally, we're working together now, and I think this is also a symptom of something big in terms of paradigm that's happening in the city. Of course, connected with the lab that I'm running and other things that are happening. So I don't know. There are a lot of things that are happening here in the city. I think that it resonates a lot with the type of things that have been happening here. And I think the city itself has been like a petri dish that's, you know, starting to grow some bacteria now. And that's it for now.
That's great, Ernesto. Thank you so much. And I love the use of the word embroider there when talking about the way that you want to approach those collaborations. It's a really nice way of putting it. I think kind of across all of the projects, something that's really come through for me as a thread is really the interdisciplinarity and knowledge exchange that happens with a variety of collaborators, including technologists, scientists, and the public. But I guess it doesn't always start off in that way, working in a very interdisciplinary and collaborative way. I suppose we've seen best case examples here, but something I'm interested to kind of ask each of you is a little bit more maybe about your journey in this and some of the failures, because it doesn't always work out. Kat, I might come to you first with that one.
I was just thinking, where to start with the failures. Well, for me, I guess it started back in 2009 when I graduated my master's, and I actually shortly after came to Science Gallery in Dublin with my graduating project. And it was performance-based, which meant I spent 3 weeks at Science Gallery and I got to know people there. And that was actually a really big boost to my my own direction, you could say. And I've had an ongoing relationship with Science Gallery since then, kind of curating, I think it works out at about an exhibition a year, maybe once every 2 years. So yeah, so I'd say that's been very, very meaningful to me, and also shaped my thinking as well a little bit. And I think I've shaped Science Gallery's thinking a little as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, and failures, there's always failures. There's tons of failures. Most everything is a good failure, so it helps you get to the next thing, I think.
Well, you definitely learn from it. Sasha, I suppose that's one of the things in kind of collaborating with many people, including the public. And I loved the way you kind of described, it's not just this kind of transactional thing or citizen science is just being about public engagement. It's more about these interventions. Could you maybe speak a little bit more to that?
Sure. Yeah, so in terms of intervention, so I think with Aeroscene, we're very inspired by the work of a series of feminist and also artistic sort of science and technology scholars. I'm thinking of Nerea Calvillo, who's a friend of mine, or Max Lee Boidon of the Civic Laboratory for Environmental Action Research, I believe, who are really sort of pushing environmental scientists and also us in our work to think very critically about how the community and the public are involved in what we're doing. And they're asking us to think about several kind of core questions. So one of the questions that comes out of their work is sort of about like the how. So how is environmental data produced? So really looking at the processes. So what kinds of protocols are involved? What kinds of technologies are involved? Are these technologies sort of parachuted into underserved communities, data is extracted and those technologies are kind of taken back out into the global north primarily, or are those technologies co-fabricated with communities so the dialogue can become much more long-term and rewarding? Another question is, who does the environmental data serve? So often, as I found working with environmental scientists, once data is collected, that's like the triumph in itself. And then it kind of goes on to how can we publish or analyze this data? So we're really kind of inspired by people like Max and Araya to think about, once data is collected, who does that data actually empower? Who does it serve, right? Does it serve the communities who are most adjacent or proximate to environmental harms? Or does it ultimately serve the elite academics who want to publish papers on environmental issues? I could speak a lot more, Aisling, about these sorts of questions, but I think we're really, really intrigued by, again, how feminists and artists are asking us to think a little bit more critically about what does environmental science mean in collaboration with communities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense now, and I'm really, it's such an interesting approach. Ernesto, I might come to you with it, I suppose, just on kind of collaborations in this way. I suppose, yes, both the challenges and failures of them, but how have you found, kind of from your starting point, approaching work in this kind of interdisciplinary way?
Sorry, the microphone. I was thinking about two types of failures. I see. I mean, I totally agree with Kat and Sasha. Like you, of course, you learn all the time. You try to avoid, because it sometimes takes money and time. But when you experiment, you expect to, not just find exactly what you were looking for at the first time. So most of the times when I work with other people or students, and like I almost have a rule, like we have to do the things, like to do things the first time just to learn how they don't work, and then start to fix and to do like the real thing, because most of the times you cannot just imagine all the things that are going to happen. Of course, that's more patent when you're working with experimenting and working with different disciplines and different mindsets, and that's exactly. I mean, this first part, I'm working more as an artist and as the process of making an artwork, which most of the times, at least in my case, are devices or machines or things that have to do something, a part of addressing and problematizing something, but also working with the laboratory and trying to make these networks and these collaborations. You have to be some kind of a hacker or something. I mean, not in cyber terms, but like a social hacker, or I don't know how to say it. And that I'm resonating a bit with my humanities and social sciences background, because it has to do a lot with language, politics, structures, institutions, traditions, inertia, systems. So that's a lot part of the work, because most of the times what can work and how to set the parameters for collaborations, but most of the times you have to fight some other social elements that are key for this to happen, and that's a lot of the work, and not all the times it works, because you have to be very diplomatic in terms of your position in the structure and how you can push things, and when you have to just wait for the next chance. And so I think this has also been inspired by my work as an artist, because I've become very stubborn. So I never give up. I just just learn something and try to wait for the next time, and I think that's what's needed here, because of course, as I've been saying about the history of the school and the history of the city, they have been very successful and very important for some topics. But now that you have to you want to put something else in the table, which eventually is going to be very important for the critical design and thinking of these other things. I mean, it's not like it's just another independent thing happening, but it's something that's getting back to the verb that's been embroidered, you know, with the other things in terms of thinking of a civilization, and this other feast thing that Kat was mentioning, you know, like trying to change the way we see civilization and the way we trace the direction we should be walking towards. So yeah, there's a lot of faith here, and I think it's just about learning and about you're always getting closer.
Yeah, I love that. And it is, you know, it is very much that kind of hacker vibe, or the experimenting and really being curious. Kat, it kind of reminds me a little bit of your presentation, and kind of, we've always been biohackers. You know, could you talk a little bit more about this kind of intersection of art science and activism and feast? Please tell us more.
Yeah, I think also just building on Ernesto's thing there, I think art science collaborations also sounds like this monolithic thing that's happening. And in my experience, at least, it's always just interpersonal kind of relationships. The best collaborative projects are always just with other people that you get along with. And it doesn't work if there's somebody that's, you know, that you don't agree with. So it's sort of, you can't just artificial, oh, here's an artist and here's a scientist, and we'll smush them together and good luck. So it's, yeah, it's for me, it's really about these individual relationships. And I was thinking, oh, Art Science Bangalore came up a few times, and that's because, you know, we have a relationship to Yashas Shetty, who is the founder of that. And so these things are kind of, even though there's these names, these institutional or para-institutional names of things, that it's actually people behind them as well that sort of push things along and make them happen. Like Ernesto sounds like the social hacker getting everything done. But Aisling, what was your question? Sorry.
Just to speak a little bit more in your work about that kind of intersection of art science and activism.
Yeah. So I guess I don't really consider myself an activist. I think their activists do a very important job, and I like to be a support for that activity, but I don't think they or I would see myself as necessarily that specifically. But I think with, for example, the smug tasting project, there is something really exciting about kind of coming up with a gesture and an idea and testing it out, and then it evolving over time in many, many different configurations, and it's sort of inspiring other people and then picking it up and pulling it further in a different direction. And it's a messy process. Like, we don't have, you know, a database of all the things and like a clean, you know, we have actually created a kit of how to, but it's not, yeah, we're a little messy. I don't know if it's publicly published. If anybody wants one, just get in touch. We send them out freely, but it's also a little bit about resources and organization and that type of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just rambling. Maybe Sasha has more to say.
Right. Go ahead, Sasha.
No, I just wanted to pick up on that point about how collaboration works best when there are strong interpersonal relationships. And I think that's something that's very true with Aeroscene. So we very much found that in order to make the project kind of like sustain itself or have the lure that it needs to like sustain itself, we needed to have like Aeroscene summits. We had to have like group gatherings. And after our first stratospheric launch of an Aeroscene sculpture across Europe, which is when an Aeroscene sculpture travels up to, I think, 16 kilometers in altitude, I was very struck that Tomas Saracino, in the kind of studio gathering after that launch, when he was sort of talking about the launch, he actually didn't show any images of what the sculpture had seen from the stratosphere. He rather showed like the lunch moment, the lake moment, like the driving in the car after the sculpture moment. And it was very much about the kind of social and affective sort of quality of that experience. And I think that's how like we've been able to keep things together and keep the project feeling good for everybody.
Yeah, that reminds me also the something that has become like a motto that I learned in Science Gallery, like find your champions, which is a lot about, I mean, in the end, it's persons, it's people. So we have to get along and like convince each other, you know, and discuss and be in the same channel. And also that takes me to something that I think is very important in this topic of citizen science is when I think about that, I think not only about the collaboration with scientists and citizens and the way they can boost the data collection, but also about how the other direction, you know, how the participation of citizens and the way you structure how you observe and perceive like the reality and the way you try to see information and to take decisions upon that. I think that's something very, very, very important, you know, which is also, I mean, it's more like in the philosophical like day-to-day thing, but it's something very important that's happening with participating in things that are not just giving data to, I mean, because it's happening like giving data, also the projects addressing something that's important for this community, but also what's happening in terms of how you work with the information after those type of experiences. And that's something that's also been fed up by failure anyway, you know, like it's just practicing and learning and putting tax on the wrong ways.
Yeah, it really is. And actually there's a few questions coming in now from the audience, and one that kind of relates to that a little bit, that maybe you'll be able to kind of speak to is from Nicholas. So how might a third role in the collaboration, someone who is not an artist nor a scientist, be able to help the social hacking element of an interdisciplinary project? And what kind of person might fill that kind of role?
Is that for me?
Yeah, to the panel. So please, Ernest, I think it's related to a lot of what you were saying there.
Yeah, it rang a bell about the third world. So, I mean, I'm going to be brief. I don't know exactly. I think it's just about trying to be aware, critical, and find formulas and try things. And I always think about, I mean, I've had the opportunity to travel and of course to have an education, like being to college, and, you know, like to see at different types of point of view. But I've always had this reflection of thinking how these parallel histories are happening, like how in the end, of course, there's like this major thing, like the civilization history, but it's structured by a lot of independent histories. So I try to, of course, learn from what I can in terms of references and other artists, of course, scientists, theories, institutions, but also try to just be aware of what's happening around me and try to be an inventor, you know, to just try to find what works here. And sometimes it's gonna not be, I mean, not that that's all the time it works, but I think that's something that leads to discovery, to be aware of your own context and try to work in the way, to invent the ways you can work in that context. And sometimes it's not gonna be the same way it happens in other contexts. So I don't know. I don't know if the best idea is to think on formulas.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, of course, we can share good experiences and things that ring a bell, but I think that's a wider or a bigger conversation, you know?
Yeah,
like
yeah. No, certainly.
Learning and sharing. Where are the common ground? Where is the common ground?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, so a question kind of related to that, or I suppose kind of inquiring, is, so it is difficult to evaluate science-art collaborations because we cannot put a number or value on aesthetic experience. However, if someone were to begin establishing a framework for the evaluation of science-art collaborations, where do you suggest they start? I might actually come to you, Sasha, first with that one.
What a difficult question. Wow.
Sorry.
I mean, no, but I think it's a really, really critical question, because especially in the university, we're often asked to show how our work has impact. And to show impact, we often need to show numbers, right? And so how do you show that an exhibition has had impact? How do you show that a performance has had impact? So it's a very, very important question, because we need to fight for resources in the university. We need to fight for our place. And so that question really gets to the heart of how the arts are evaluated. And I think there is no easy answer here. I mean, I've seen loads of book proposals and other studies that look at, you know, hundreds of surveys collected about experiences in art exhibitions, that look at how many people have like interacted with different things online. And while I respect that work, I always think that, or I find myself thinking that we need to find other ways of respecting what art does, because it is not, it cannot be boiled down to numbers and figures. And I think part of also what artists ask us to think about is what is missing when we only rely on the quantitative data set, which I'm obviously thinking about a lot with the air quality work that I'm doing in Buenos Aires. So what kinds of things are we missing from the emotional side, from the sensual side, from the embodied side, that cannot be captured in a spreadsheet? So that is not a direct answer to that question, but just like, I think it's useful to point to how thorny that question is and how important it is, and how much we have to keep thinking about how we can navigate this issue.
I'm back. A magic disappearing trick there. Sorry about that, guys.
I agree with Sasha. I think that the fundamental question of like measuring impact needs to be readdressed. I remember a few years ago, it was a big deal in the UK. I went to, I can't remember, one of the big museums in London, and there was people with questionnaires, you know, how did this exhibition change your life? And I was like, I have no idea. I might be able to tell you 10 years from now, but that's not how the system works in terms of being able to measure. So yeah, I think that using numbers and quantifying an artistic experience is really bizarre and should be removed, to be honest.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, that happens to me a lot. I mean, of course, I think that a shared problem, a systemic problem. The way we, of course, the way we've been accumulating and regarding what's valuable right now in terms of civilization. So that permeates to what we do. And in my case, it's been down to utility. Like, I mean, of course, not. I fight that, but that's the thing here. It's like, so what this helps? Like, how can I use this? You know, like how much money or how much impact or what's necessity of the society is gonna solve, and that's not the way it works. And this is how we've been closing a lot of very important conversations and experimentations in terms of social groups, because in the end we're just trying to prioritize. Is that a word? Did I invented something? Prioritize. Just what's immediate and what works right now and it helps and can be used for business, and like, and there's nothing wrong with these other things, but as a society and as like the benefit of the humankind, we're lacking things. We're underestimating other things, and I think that's exactly what we're trying to do here, like try to raise the hand, and and of course we have to I like a lot this other phrase of going two steps backwards to go one step backwards to go 2 steps forward. So in the end you have to have a couple of statistics and numbers, and to deliver these type of things in order to be able to deliver the others.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like co-opting the statistics, like co-opting that quantitative stuff so that we can move forward with the work that we want to do.
Yeah. And
I think that's I can't actually believe that we're after coming up on time, guys. So we're actually gonna have to wind it up, I'm afraid, but I actually feel like we're only getting started. We could easily go for another hour. So there are questions flying in. I feel like the audience were only getting warmed up in the last 15 minutes. This is the first of these sessions in Compass. So absolutely check back on sciencegallery.org and across social media to see for future ones. But also we will try and address any of the questions that came through that we didn't get to by email. So do kind of shoot on an email to us afterwards. And to all of the panelists, I can't thank you enough. It's been so fascinating. I can't believe that we've flown through that hour. So thank you all, and to everyone for attending. Thanks for sticking with us, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Sorry we can't answer all the questions. They're good ones.
Hey, Mairead, how are you?